Yeah, so my timing is not great. I unfortunately missed what would have been a really cool shot of a sea otter sticking his or her head out of the water and just, taking a few breaths of nice clean air. But then right when I grabbed my phone to try to record another video, he or she decided, nope, you can't take my picture without permission from my agent. So we missed the otter, but that's kind of one of the other neat things about Washington State is we do have marine mammals. We don't have dolphins because it's too cold, but we do have everything from seals to sea otters to as big as a whale. And in fact, you saw my previous video, one of the previous videos that was a 4-part series, each one was short. You can take a boat ride out to the Pacific Ocean to see whales. And the whales that you would be viewing would be the orca whales typically. So that's the nice thing about Washington, Western Washington, which is why I love it. I mean, yes, I live here because this is where my family is and I want to be close to them. Yes, it's because this is where I grew up. So this is all I know, so to speak, although I've visited some other places. But I really like it here. I don't like how gray it gets sometimes, but you look at all these different shades. I mean, yeah, like definitely it's very artistic. And if you were an artist, which I am not, but if you're an artist, you might find all of these various shades of gray to be interesting and worthy of taking a picture and painting a picture and drawing it, etc., etc., etc. There's a lot of fishing that takes place in Washington State. For example, I happen to work for a seafood company that shall remain nameless, but Washington actually has a lot of seafood companies that have their corporate offices here. They'll have their boats here. If their boats need to be repaired or just to spend the winter someplace, typically do it down here. And then they'll sail on up to places like Alaska or maybe off the Oregon coast, etc., etc., when it's the season for catching whatever seafood they're able to catch. But yeah, so as you can see, this, to me it looks like, I don't know, but I think this is some type of fishing boat, although I could be wrong. And we're also right next door to a marina, so that's why it's called the Edmonds Marina Beach Park. So you can either moor your boat and pay a monthly fee, which I don't know how much it is, but I'm sure it's not cheap, or you can put your boat in dry dock and just have it stored, outside of the water, and that's cheaper, but still costs money. And then they have, for the people that live on their boats, they do have showers and bathrooms if you don't feel like using the restroom on your boat. And those, showers and bathrooms are open to not just you as the renter, the storage, the moorage for, the place where you're allowed to have your boat be parked, essentially, which I think is called a slip, but any of your guests as well can do it. But those are closed to the public. So like if I, as somebody that went to the park, was like, oh man, I really could use a shower, no, I can't shower there. I also cannot just walk over to the boats, the marina, and trespass because they've got security in place. So you have to have the key to get down to the areas where the boats are stored, just for safety's sake. That looks like a seagull on top of that random post out there. That post isn't like that randomly. It was possibly there. There may have been some kind of dock here before, perhaps an old ferry dock even. Washington has a very long history of having ferries. Before we had really nice bridges, people would have to take ferries just to get across freshwater because For example, we have Lake Washington, which is between Seattle and some of the suburbs, places like Bellevue and Redmond, where Microsoft started. So now we have like 2 big bridges that go across that lake, but in the past they did not. So my great-grandmother had to ride in on a ferry, but that ferry was not like engine powered, you know. It was basically like a raft, like a fancy big raft for people's wagons to, you know, get onto, and then they'd take you over to the other side. So even if you wanted to go to some place that's nearby, Mercer Island, for example, is an island in between Seattle and Bellevue. You would have to take a ride on the ferry, the raft, or whatever you would call it at that time. So yeah, Washington's come a long way, but we still don't have like bridges everywhere. So if you want to go further out, you'll have to take a ferry. And you can't really see them right now because they are about to probably get their passengers on board in order to make the trip back to this side, to Edmonds. But you can actually catch a ferry pretty much every hour up to like late at night. There's like, even on Sundays they have ferries that run. Also, there's parts of Washington where you can only get there by boat or plane. So, like, for example, there's the San Juan Islands, which are between Washington State and Canada. Technically, Vancouver Island, I guess you could say it's part of the San Juan, if I'm not mistaken. Vancouver Island belongs to Canada. But the other islands to the south of that belong to Washington State, and you can take a ferry to them. And it takes like up to like 4 hours to get to the furthest one out. So, you know, pack your patience. They do have Wi-Fi on the boats now. They have restaurants, well, a restaurant on the boats, vending machines and that sort of thing. So. And if you're like seasick, you don't really need to worry about it that much because the boats do not travel that fast and the waves are not that choppy. If they would be, then they wouldn't actually make the crossing because it wouldn't be safe. Actually, now you can see in the background there. Okay, so the white things you're seeing right in the middle, and sorry for the shakiness, is the ferries. Above them are what looks perhaps like hills, and those are part of the Olympic Mountains, which is the mountain range that separates us from the Pacific Ocean. And then to the south of me, beyond this little post here, is in the distance Seattle. You cannot see it right now because of clouds, but yeah, that would be Seattle down there. Over here to this side you have the dog park, so that your dogs can run off leash inside that area. Plus they have the beach that's for dogs to be able to play off leash. The way that they separated it from the regular people is just, you know, they've got the big amount of rocks there, and kind of like a breakwater, but also it keeps the human side private from the dog side, so to speak. And then behind us, behind us is a playground for children. There's a kayak rental area. There's a volleyball net that you can see there, so you can just play volleyball in the sand, beach volleyball. There's, you know, a hill where you can have your picnics. Those buildings up there are condominiums. And then the reason this park is kind of narrow is not just because of the hill behind us, but also there is railroad tracks. So this is not the only park like this in Washington, where it's like a narrow strip that's right along Puget Sound. There's a lot of them up in the Edmonds and Mukilteo and Linwood areas. Those are suburbs of Seattle, north of Seattle, because they decided to do something with the land between the railroad tracks and Puget Sound so that people would be able to enjoy the land and enjoy the water. So thank you for this, checking out the videos. If you've watched it to this end, thank you. Sorry it was so long.